look, welcome to this week's episode of Leaders on a Mission, where I speak with leaders, inspiring leaders who are challenging the way things have been done previously, looking to leverage technology and science and creating a better world for future generations. And in today's episode, I'm joined by a true pioneer, Dr. Pam Marrone, a real thought leader in sustainable agriculture, a true entrepreneur, having founded 3 companies, scaled 2 bio companies, sold 1 and led an IPO as well. So following a 30-year back-to-back career as a CEO, I suppose with all the responsibilities that come from the day-to-day running of operations, Pam shows no sign of slowing down and is currently now managing a portfolio of positions within the ag industry. But Pam is like a bit of a celebrity on the circuit. They queue up to speak to her at industry events. And look, Pam, welcome to the show. It's great to have such a leader and pioneer on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure. So let's maybe take it, right back to the beginning, actually, as you were growing up. What were the major kind of influences and, ideas that really helped shape, your, young kind of Pam Marrone?
Well, I grew up, I'm here right now at my mom's in Killingworth, Connecticut, and it's about a 40-acre, beautiful little mini farm out in the woods. And there's a 2-acre bass fishing and swimming pond that we built when I was about 7, and a huge vegetable garden, which I just put to bed a couple days ago. And so I grew up with nature all around me, and my parents were very much, their grandparents were immigrants from Europe. And so they brought that gardening spirit to here. And what's interesting, whatever's old is new again. So they did all the trendy things that are new today: organic gardening, composting, manure tea, compost tea, you name it. And so I grew up with that. My mother also is a birder, and she subscribed to Audubon magazine from way back. And she put, when Silent Spring happened with Rachel Carson, she took that Audubon issue and made me read it and talked to me about how the birds are being affected by these new chemicals. And then one day, I think I was probably about 7 or 8, my father was all upset because the gypsy moth caterpillars were destroying all of his prized trees. And there was a little dogwood tree in front of the house, right outside the kitchen window in front of the house, that was getting eaten alive by these gypsy moths. I mean, there were literally hordes of hundreds and hundreds of them. So he said, I'm going to go get something to kill it. So he went to the store and he brought back what was available. And it was carbaryl, which is 7, which is still on the market today, but in limited use. But it is a broad spectrum and it kills everything. So he sprays it, and then all the gypsy moths within 24 hours fall off the tree in a black mass at the bottom, gooey stuff. And then also my mother dragged me out, and there were lady beetles, lacewings, honeybees, all the good bugs dead as well. She was so mad that she banned him from she's an organic gardener. Why would you do that? So he goes back to the store and he says, I need something safer. So there is beet tea, Bacillus thuringiensis, the first ever commercialized bioinsecticide, sitting there at the little farm shop. And he gets it, and then he starts spraying it around. And I said, well, Dad, how does it work? How did it go? And he goes, well, I don't know. I don't know if it works, but it makes your mother happy and it's good for the environment. So that is the story of my career, because
Man, that's incredible.
It really is, because these tools, these biologicals, have always been looked at sort of as, well, do they work as well as chemicals?
And you remember that moment? I mean, how old were you when your dad took you to the store and you went in there? And I mean, it's obviously such a clear memory.
Well, I didn't go with him. He went to the store, but he came back with it. But I was probably around 7 or 8, or in that sort of around that time frame. Yeah, and I got interested in integrated pest management. My mother sent off a letter to the U.S. Department of Agriculture asking about careers in entomology, and they sent back a grainy black and white brochure of a brochure on integrated pest management. What is IPM? I think that was when I was about 10, actually. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for a career. And little did I know that that was actually the first ever definition of IPM and the founding of IPM. And so I said, that's what I want to do. And I never wavered, ever.
Amazing. Amazing. Tell me, I mean, you mentioned about your parents being like organic gardeners. What did they do career-wise?
So my mother, both of them were school teachers. My mother's an English teacher and my father was a history teacher. They met at Teachers College, got married, and then bought this place for cash, $10,000. And then they said they wanted a family. So my father was a World War II vet. He was a tail gunner in World War II, flew over Germany and Italy and others places. And so wow. Then they said that they couldn't raise kids on a teaching career. So because my mother was going to have kids and she was retired from teaching, so she started having her first kid. And then my father got a job at a local utility company, and he became an energy efficiency expert, pioneer in the country, creating the first ever energy efficiency standards for the country. And my mother had 5 kids, and then she ran for a little town, the town here in Killingworth, ran for a town position called Judge of Probate, and became a Judge of Probate, which is an elected position. So you get to do wills and probate people's estates, and you marry people. And that's what she did for quite some time. I think it was, well, several years. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, incredible. So such a, your whole career, it sparked from somewhere, and it sparked from your parents' love of organic gardening and the early kind of influences of you as a young girl.
Yep. And then when they went to the state extension and specialist and said they want to turn this swamp and part of the property into a pond. So they dug out this pond, and it's now beautiful, still there, beautiful. I was actually in my waders a couple days ago taking out lily pads by hand, because they wanted my mom, they were taking over a little bit. She wanted me to take some out, but I spent hours at that fishing, and then I would tie my own flies. And so I learned about insects. So you could tie your flies looking just like the pond bugs, and so I've spent lots and lots of time identifying all the insects that lived in the pond, and then fishing the bass, which was stocked with bass after they built it. Yeah.
No, great. And so you went on to do a PhD in entomology.
Bachelor's in entomology at Cornell, and then a PhD in entomology at North Carolina State University. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose when you were completing that, what were your kind of ideas and dreams for a career at that stage?
Well, I was very fortunate because at North Carolina State University, they had a huge National Science Foundation grant to study the soybean agro-ecosystem. It was the first time ever that an agricultural system was seen as an ecosystem, an agro-ecosystem. So, and characterize the entire ecosystem. So I had my PhD thesis was a part of that on the bean leaf beetle. So it was fundamental influence again. And my major professor, Ron Stinner, happened to be from Berkeley. And his PhD was from Berkeley. And that was actually the foundation of IPM. So again, you can see this theme. I'm being indoctrinated throughout. So I applied for a few academic jobs, but then realized I had no interest in being an academician, especially since there was pretty rampant discrimination against women. So I would contact various professors at well-known professors who will not be named at venerable land-grant institutions in the United States. And they said, we will not take you because you're female and you'll just drop out and have babies. And of course, obviously you're not supposed to say that. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? So then I interviewed, they took a bunch of us to a agri-chemical company in North Carolina. You could probably guess which it was at the time. And same thing happened. They said, they looked at us women and they said, one of the questions we're going to ask, which was illegal at the time, still illegal, how many children are you going to have before your age of 30? And I went, oh, brother. And by the way, I don't have kids. I focused on my career and never had kids. But so I was like, oh, brother, what am I going to do? So little did I mean, so Monsanto was recruiting for someone, an entomologist, because they only had one entomologist in the whole company, to start up a new program to look at new ways to control pests without the use of chemicals, because they were trying to distance themselves from their toxic legacy of parathion and Agent Orange. So I interviewed and I got the job, and it was actually quite an exciting job, because they said you can create whatever program you want to find new ways to control pests. And I said, wow, this is great, because I got soured on academia, and then got soured on working for an agri-chemical company because of what they said to me. So this one was an interesting opportunity. So that's how I ended up in St. Louis. Yeah.
Great.
I got married, by the way, to my husband and we got married. We met when we were 17 at Cornell, and then we got married the week before graduation. So he's a social worker, so he followed me my whole career. Yeah, we packed up and went to Missouri, St. Louis.
And I'm very glad Monsanto didn't ask that question as well.
I know, because if they had asked, I would like, what am I going to do?
Where would you have gone at that time?
Where would I have gone? Yeah.
I mean, we're probably talking, what, late 80s, early 90s?
It was the early 80s, yeah.
Yeah, different world now.
It is a different world, yes. Yeah.
I mean, how many women would have worked for the company, for instance, when you joined? I know that you were maybe the only one in entomology, or a very small team.
Let's see, at Monsanto, I was the highest ranking woman in R&D. There were a few of us. At the top leadership forum that they had, which was the top 300 managers, there was me and Juanita Hinshaw, the treasurer. That was it.
Wow.
So, yeah. I always remember at the end of this big black tie dinner, they handed out cigars, and Juanita starts smoking the cigar, and I said, I'm sorry, I just can't do that. I have many more of those stories. It'll go in a book someday. That's for another
episode, isn't it? Really?
Another episode, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Incredible. Different world. So tell me, you spent years when you were at Monsanto, and you were deep in the science. Apparently, screening hundreds of thousands of microorganisms for pesticide kind of molecules. So I suppose deep can go into the science. When did you realize you had this burning platform and desire to found your own company?
Well, that was, let's see. I loved the screening of the microbes, and what happened was, I kind of lost my control of my career at Monsanto, which probably was a good thing, in the sense that they had my whole career planned out for me. I was going to rotate through different jobs, become a top leader, but I really fell in love with the microbial natural product screening, and that's what I wanted to do. So when I got a call from Novo Nordisk, a Danish company that I had never heard of, and they said, we're looking for someone to start up a company, and we've got 3 possible locations: Seattle, Washington, near our Zymogenetics subsidiary, North Carolina, near our Franklinton, or Davis, California. And Davis, California, because they just happened to be visiting there when it was sunny and bright, and it was dark and really dark in Denmark, and said, we want to go to a sunny California place. So I interviewed, and I said, wow, so I get to set up a company doing everything from scratch, screening microbes, looking for natural products for pest management. Woohoo. And by the way, we decided, I think I'd like to go to Davis, California. And so that's how I ended up, and then literally set up everything from scratch. And so, but I didn't have to raise the money, so they gave me the money. That's different from AgriQuest and Marrone Bio. But that was my first company. We called it Entotech. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the microbial screening, you fell in love with it. Tell me a little bit about that. What was it about, microbial screening and products, organisms?
Well, at Monsanto, we had a pioneering program, and, that was cut in favor of GMO, screening proteins looking for GMOs, and one could argue that that probably was the right decision. I don't know if I would, I don't know, because Monsanto was so successful with GMOs, but I would have loved it if we had been able to continue with the microbial natural product screening. But, that went on for enough years where I could see the potential. We discovered some amazing things. It was really quite pioneering. I'd set up the first automated robotic high throughput screening in the industry, and which could screen massive numbers of microbes. And then we had chemists, natural product chemists, that could identify the compounds that were produced by those microbes and their pesticidal activities. So we screened for weeds, insects, nematodes, and plant pathogens. So the full gamut. And then the molecules popping out were just amazing and exciting. So that really got me hooked.
Yeah, no, great. But still, I mean, from going from deep into the technical, I know you didn't have to raise the financing with Entotech, but it was a big step, right? I mean,
it was, yeah, because I had to build the building from scratch. But interestingly, I had actually built the insectary facility 3 times at Monsanto. They did a practice insectary in Warson Road, then a real one in Chesterfield, and they literally handed me over to the contractor, said, we don't know how to build an insectary. So I had to do all kinds of research how to do a fancy insectary. And so when I got to do Entotech, they said, build another one. So I built the whole facility. It was actually the first building in the University Research Park in Davis, California, in 1990. And I got to hire the contractor, do everything like it was my own startup. And they were pretty hands-off at that time. That changed later, but in the initial part, it was hands-off, got to hire all the people. And so it was just like a regular startup. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. And tell me, with you exited that business. That business was sold, right?
Yeah. So Novo Nordisk realized that it was really difficult to manage a subsidiary like this from afar. It was the first R&D based subsidiary outside of Denmark, and it had limited success in that it was very difficult to bridge the cultural gap. So we had all kinds of cultural anthropologists trying to bridge the gap between the Danish culture and the American culture. And we had limited success in doing that. We did send scientists back and forth, which really helped. But what the management at Novo Nordisk realized is that they had trouble keeping their hands off. And over time, they really decided they wanted to control all of it, which was not good for a startup. So they changed their model and they sold us to Abbott Labs, which is now Valent Biosciences. And instead of starting up ones from scratch, they were going to buy into existing biotech companies. But I did help them, interestingly, 2 years later, in 1992, I helped them start up Novo Nordisk Biotech, which was a subsidiary in their main enzyme business, because they liked what I did with Entotech. So they said, we'll set up one right across the street. That's still there. So they didn't sell that, but they changed the model and had a resident Dane running it regularly from the start, although that's changed also. And then over time, what's interesting is they have then learned how to have a freestanding R&D based subsidiary out of Denmark. And then American is running it, a woman, Debbie Yaver, is running it now. So it's interesting to see the evolution of how they were able to bridge that cultural gap.
Yeah, I mean, there is a cultural gap, but it's also a big time gap as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's 9 hours. It's tough.
That is a tough, that is a tough gap as well.
Yeah.
For sure. And so, I mean, what was really interesting before you went to set up AgriQuest, what was it about that journey with Entotech? You must have learned a hell of a lot on that first kind of commercial kind of journey for yourself. So, what was it the confidence that you kind of gained within that then led to you wanting to set up AgriQuest?
Yes, and it was that because they decided they were going to sell us, I felt like my dream was being stopped again, so that I couldn't finish what I wanted to do. the discoveries that we had made in the natural product screening. We had a thriving BT business. I think we were number 3. But the discoveries of the new products, that was going to be stopped, and all those microbes sold to Abbott Labs. So I said, well, I've got to do it again. And this time I've got to do it completely on my own, so I can completely call my own shots. So I don't have the corporate politics. Both, I realized after Monsanto and Novo Nordisk that I detested corporate politics, because it took so long from when you proposed something to when you actually got action. And I'm not a politician, and I've had to learn how to be partly one, but I'm still not great at it. And that's what you have to do in a big corporation, is play the politics. And I just want to get results, and I want to just do the work. And I don't want to have to sort of kiss up to the boss kind of thing. Although, I've never been good at that. And so I felt I had to do it from scratch. But although I was kind of naive, because I've learned that no matter whether an entrepreneur or not, there's still people above you, whether it's shareholders or board members or board chairs, that you do have to kind of suck up to. So
well, it's a different set of problems, isn't it? But it seemed that, for you building this business with a blank sheet of paper, there was a certain amount of kind of freedom. It was your baby.
Yes, that was fantastic. That for both Marrone Bio and AgriQuest. And then Marrone Bio was even more exciting, because then I could build on each company. I could build on what I learned before and do it even better. And that's certainly been borne out with Marrone Bio. Yeah.
No, great.
And the times have changed too.
Yeah. But also, at that time, I think you raised about $60 million and in the mid-90s. And I'm just trying to picture.
I did raise $60 million. Yeah, that was pretty astonishing now that I look back on it.
I don't know what the investment ecosystem was back then, but I would imagine there were some significant differences in raising finance back then than now.
Very, very big differences. There were no ag investors, none, zero. I actually cold called. I dialed for dollars. It's so different. Young people can't even imagine this today. There's no internet. So I had to have a hard copy Venture Capital Association book, a big, thick, hard copy book. It's like this thick, of all the VCs. And I went page by page looking for venture capitalists that had biotech in their sphere. And I stumbled upon a very, very big venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, Don Valentine. He's now retired, but I called him, cold called. He actually took my call, because he probably thought, who is this woman, young woman, just cold calling. So I told him what I wanted to do. And he said, well, that sounds interesting. I don't invest in ag, but I do know somebody who might invest in what you're doing. I know Wayne Silby, the chairman of Calvert Social Investments. And that's like the one environmentally responsible, socially responsible investment fund. And so he says, I'll make an introduction. So I called Wayne Silby, and I had, the company, that AgriQuest was less than a year old. And he goes, well, you're less than a year old. If you get to the first year and you pass your first year, then I'll talk to you. So I waited. Okay, then I called him again, and he goes, funny, okay, you made it a year. So now we have this venture fair, first ever. It's called Investor Circle. And we allow entrepreneurs to pitch to some 200, 300 so angels and venture capitalists who are interested in social responsible, environmentally responsible, and minority and women backed companies. And that's, way back then, we're talking about 95, it was pioneering. So 96, I fly to Chicago and I pitch. And they told you exactly, gave you a mentor, told you exactly how you did it. And so I had my pitch was right after lunch, and everybody was like snoozing like this. And so I go, hi, I'm Pam Marrone. I'm AgriQuest, and I'm going to change the world, blah, blah, blah. And so everybody jumps out of their chair like that. And then they stand at attention. I gave my pitch, gave my 10-minute pitch. And then after the pitch, this woman comes up to me and she says, I'm with Rockefeller and Company. I have a fund called the Odyssey Fund and we invest in environmentally responsible businesses and women-led businesses. I go, oh, really? And she led the round, and I raised $4 million. And it was Rockefeller family money. And then I worked at, how did I raise eventually 60 million? I worked and worked and worked. And entrepreneurs underestimate how much time it takes. You're like a salesperson. You have a book of leads, of prospects. And when some fall out, you need more. So I had hundreds of prospects to get the ones that I did. So, I really worked my tail off. And that's how I got it. And so it ended up being, I was like the one ag investment in each portfolio. So like a life science portfolio of pharma biotech, and then there'd be this one ag investment, and that's how it ended up. Yeah.
Great story. But look, very different from where you've come from. You're on a lab, you're screening organisms, you love the science. How did you, over the years, you would have spent a lot of your time dealing with investors, raising financing. How did you, did you enjoy that aspect of the job? I
actually enjoyed raising money more than I liked doing the science. So by the way, I had a boss at Monsanto that said I wasn't meant to be a scientist. I was meant to be a manager. So I was pulled out of the lab the first year at Monsanto, and I have not been in the lab since 1985. So I'm very much up on the science, but I have not actually done any lab work. So that was smart of him. He realized what I was supposed to do. So I love raising money. I love selling to investors the vision and the mission and the vision. And that's why people want to, have always wanted to work for the companies that I founded. And again, you're a salesperson. And so you're selling the dream. And so that I like to do that. Now at Monsanto and Novo Nordisk, I took a lot of business training. If I had to do it all over again, I would have gotten an MBA. But I took 3 business classes a year at Monsanto for 7 years. And then also some top INSEAD and INSEAD and other Columbia Business School classes at Novo Nordisk. So the corporations I worked for ended up, backing me with some very, very good business classes. So, I did have some business training. Yeah.
What do you think an MBA would have given you different though?
The credibility. Yeah. So
really?
When I started up Marrone, let's see, was it Marrone Bio? Yeah, Marrone Bio. When I started up Marrone Bio, even though I had started up AgriQuest and there were investors who Calvert followed me from AgriQuest to Marrone Bio and did quite well. Actually, Marrone Bio sold their stock at the high. My first hire at Marrone Bio was Julie Morris. I met her at some networking event in Sacramento, and she was took a package from I think it was Agilent and HP, and she had an MBA from Harvard. And I said, oh, this might give me the credibility I need. And so you got to have an MBA from Harvard or Stanford in the VC world. So I have hired her she actually put some of her severance money into the startup money, and became a small founding investor with me. And then I hired her as my first VP of finance and eventually CFO. And we would go to meetings, Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, and they would ignore me because I have the PhD after my name. And they would just talk to Julie, even though she knows nothing about ag. And so I realized, that's what I kind of had to do to play the game. But eventually, I would talk, and they realized after I'm on my third start. They realized I know what I was talking about.
Tell me, as a female CEO as well, you spoke a little bit about the challenges and some of the biasness of finding jobs. Have you found that journey changing much in terms of your attitudes, towards you over the last?
It's a mixed bag. I would say raising money, it was a very positive because I stood out. I was one of very few, sometimes I was the only woman in the room. Raising money. So I got a lot of attention. So VCs, oh, who's this woman? So I think that was positive in raising money. But at the same time, managing boards, managing employees and so forth, there's still a stigma against strong women, and CEOs are strong. And so, you're always criticized for you know, doing the same behaviors that a man might, but you get criticized more for it. So it's really been my whole career in trying to balance that. And I've not always done it well. But now you heard us sit, women my age, we hit a certain age and we go, you know, we're done compromising. We are who we are and we're proud of it. And we're not compromising anymore. And that's kind of how I am right now. It wears on you. My husband being a social worker, he calls it learned helplessness.
Right.
And that is it's a clinical term, but I happen to agree with him because, you know, you're sitting in the room and you want to say something or if you just simply disagree and simply express your opinion, you're called names or called emotional or whatever, or you're too strong. And then you dial back and you shut up. And then of course, that's what they want you to do, is to shut up and not express your opinion. So it's been a mixed bag, but obviously, you know, I've been successful, so I've been managed to do it. But
you certainly have. Tell me, do you see this women coming through now? You know, early stage CEOs, venture-backed CEOs on their journey now. Do you see this as the same, or do you feel that the landscape has kind of shifted and changed?
There's an amazing number of startups backed by women right now, and I'm advising 5, and it's very exciting. And I do talk to them, and they still feel some of that stigma. And like when they're in a room of guys and they express their opinion and then get ignored, and then the guy says it, and then it becomes a good idea. There's still that it's surprising, but I hear their stories. But again, they're having success, and I think it's about their determination, resilience, extra smarts. You know, it's just they're just really good at what they do, and you got to be.
Do you think you need more to succeed as a female kind of CEO? Do you need more resilience?
There is no question that you have to be better at everything you do, whether you're a woman and also minority. And you know, I'm the treasurer of Association for Women in Science, and we have a number of minority women on the board, and that's what they say all the time. You know, I've experienced it a white female, but we have a lot of Black females, and they say, you know, of course they have it even worse. So yeah, you have to be better at what you do, and I've seen it throughout my whole career that I'm under a lot more criticism than a similar guy that I've seen it time and time again. Yeah. And but again, I don't dwell on this part. You know, don't dwell on this. But I'm very active by coaching and mentoring women, and active in, as I said, the Association for Women in Science and things like that. But you know, it's not the kind of thing where you're moaning and groaning about it. You just get out and do. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, the term biologics, biologically derived solutions, I know it's quite mainstream now, as it were. And, you know, you speak about, you see a lot more from both the consumer and farmers adopting this. And there's the term sustainable agriculture, for instance, and every focus on, this. Well, when did this term start getting bandied about and used, sustainable agriculture, as it were?
Yeah, sustainable agriculture is an old term, and it's in many ways, people think it's overused. I mean, a lot of people are using regenerative ag now, but yeah, sustainability is in, and it's driven by millennials, young people. And that's when I started seeing the shift, is when young people are saying, I want transparency, I want sustainability in my food. And the farmer is definitely feeling that. There's no question, because the food companies are imposing requirements onto their farmer suppliers increasingly. I mentor a Pheronym, Fatma Kaplan, founder of Pheronym, which makes pheromones from nematodes and for biocontrol. And with her in the National Science Foundation Innovation Corps, I-Corps program, I was her mentor, and we were required to interview 100 customers. Fantastic program. So I got a real refresh of what's going on in the market. There wasn't a farmer or channel partner distributor that we talked to that didn't feel that pressure from the food channel and the consumer. And I just listened to AgriPulse West is a media outlet that just had a policy conference, and they had a speaker that did an intensive multi-year research on the consumers' views of ag and food. And indeed, they basically said that this trend is here to stay. And yes, it's driven by young people, but interestingly, it crossed all demographic groups, and it was a global trend. Us baby boomers also demanding healthier food, and the pandemic has only reinforced that. Organic food is growing dramatically, and the pandemic exposed the weaknesses of a central big industrial food system. And regional organic foods have done, local regional organic food systems have done better during the pandemic. So it's an interesting time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so that means biologicals then are a nice component of these regenerative food systems and sustainable food systems, and fit very nicely in.
Yeah. Okay. I've just got my friend joining me, by the way. Sorry. It was all the talk of the nematodes, actually.
It was, yes.
But okay, no, that's great. And I know with Marrone, you listed the company as well on the NASDAQ,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
This was, when did this take place?
2013.
That was 2013. So tell me, if you look at your whole journey as a CEO, how, I mean, that must have been, I would have thought, a really big adaptation to becoming CEO of a publicly listed company across the journey.
I would say that was the highlight of my career at that moment. It turned negative later, but it was. I mean, taking a company public is a breathtaking. See that you're offering the stock and watch watch the stock go up on the first day. It was an amazing experience. I had my mom and her sister at the bell ringing. It was just amazing. And but I don't know if I would recommend it for a small ag bio or ag tech company to go public. It's a brutal experience. You've got those quarterly financials every quarter you have to get out, and the delicate balance of what you say and don't say. And you're totally regulated. You're in a straitjacket. There's regulation, fair disclosure. So you can't say anything to one without having to tell everybody the same thing. And so lawyers rule you rule your life. And also there's an expectation of perfection on the financials. You cannot have any errors. And that's a tall order for a small company. Yeah. So there's good and bad, but it is nice that we created a new category and be able to have a lot of people offer, being able to buy a stock, the only biologicals company on the market. Yeah, but again, as I said, there's negatives to it, because we had a serious negative situation after that.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you personally, how do you deal with that the negativity or the issues and the challenges, that come up? How do you deal with the emotion? This is your baby, for instance. You've seen it all the way through to public. It must have been very difficult. And
yeah, it is. It is. And I had a really good CFO. He's announced his retirement from the company as well, just recently, Jim Boyd. And the guy is a rock. He's a Wisconsin farm boy, and he had already been a public company CFO for many years and gone through investigations and restatements like we ended up having to do. And I had an executive coach, which I really needed at the time. And he also was very good at giving me feedback. And when I started to take things very personally, because I was getting blamed for any of the issues that were happening, when he would say, it's not about you, even though your name, which actually was named after my dad, because he died the week I was starting the company, the Marrone name, which means chestnut in Italian, by the way, that's the logo. 2 chestnuts.
Is it?
And yeah,
chestnut advisors now.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
That's right. And so he said, don't take it so personally. it's even though you think it's about you, I said, yeah, you're darn right, I think it's about me. My name's in the name, but it's not about you, because everybody has their opinion and they think they're doing the right thing. They're just thinking from their own point of view. And so don't take it so personally. And my coach said the same thing. And that was really what got me through, and really focusing again on that vision and transmitting that vision. So the employees that stayed through the thick and thin are still at the company, most of them. And they have stayed because they believed in that mission and vision and what we're doing. And that really is what got me through the whole time. My whole career is what are we doing here? We're really having an impact in agriculture.
So it kept you it was almost like the North Star that kept you kind of focused towards. Yes. Yeah, that's great.
It still does. I broadened it now a bit on what I'm doing, but still the same. I still have time to have more impact on agriculture.
Yeah. I can't imagine you slowing down. You've got too much energy.
No,
well, you're probably busier than you've ever been, I would have thought.
I am actually busier. In fact, I'm here at my mom's, and she's go, "You're working." I go, "Yeah, my portfolio companies, my mentee companies, they call me at any time and say, I need help this, I need help on this, I need help on that." And know how it is in a startup. So I drop what I'm doing and I help them.
It must be a bit of a different transition, though, not to, when you're leading and operating and really being involved, offering the advice and then having to stand back. And it probably takes a bit of getting used to.
Well, I think I actually have more credibility now today. Sometimes you have more credibility outside than inside sometimes, and people listen to you more, I think. But no, I'm having a lot of fun because I do feel needed. I do feel needed, and I have a lot of experience that I can help with people. But I do realize the mindset of an entrepreneur, that they're going to go their own way sometimes, no matter what I say, and that's important to understand, which makes me a better advisor, after having been an entrepreneur. And many advisors or board members who don't understand that. They want to control or meddle too much or micromanage, and this way I can have both perspectives. And I always recommend for entrepreneurs to put entrepreneurs or former CEOs or CEOs on their board for that reason, because then how to weather the downturns better. When something goes wrong, I'll say, okay, let's just see what we can do here. Let's just roll up our sleeves. But I've had a number of investors and board members who panicked during downturns and bad times. And wow, that is really destructive and dysfunctional for a company. Really tough as an entrepreneur and to navigate. But again, that persistence, resilience, and determination got me through.
No, great. Final question for me. I could talk to you all day. I really could. What say three bits of advice that you would have for an ambitious entrepreneurial CEO of an ag kind of technology company now, as it were?
Well, the first one would be to pick your partners very carefully, and that would be board members and investors. And money's not just money. And I know they really should be selective in choosing their investors, because that could make or break you. And the same with who you put on your board and who you hire. It's hiring for values. It really has to be people who share your values and really go with that mission and vision and are aligned. Too many, myself and other entrepreneurs I talk to, our biggest mistakes are in hiring the wrong people who want to move the company into a different direction and go their own way, or create pockets of culture around themselves instead of around what you want to do. And so it's really hard to hire. You're really fast, want to get people on the boat really fast, but you have to take your time and find the right people to be on that long-term journey, because it is with investors, with board members, with your employees, it is a marriage. So you really have to be careful about that. So that's my big advice. Yeah.
Great. Pam, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure. I really appreciate you joining me. Years of wisdom and expertise that you've shared, and we really appreciate it.
Great. It's been fun. And yes, I could talk. That's why I got to write a book, because I have a lot more experiences and interesting stories to tell.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pam.